We're here at Bonhams and Butterfields with renowned photographer Jason Laure, who's showcasing some of his photographs from Woodstock Festival. Now, Jason, this auction is Monday, December 13th, and these photographs that are actually just behind you, these are all photographs you took from Woodstock?
Yes, 41 years ago. Can you believe it?
41 years ago?
Yes, the 40th anniversary was celebrated last year. I think they didn't wait for the 50th because they probably thought a lot of us wouldn't be still vertical.
So how many photographs are in the lot?
10.
Okay. And what's really unique about these photographs other than it's at Woodstock and it's really kind of cool?
Well, unfortunately, Janis Joplin is no longer with us, but two of the bands depicted here, The Who and Santana, are still touring.
Really?
Yes.
Can you go ahead and tell us about each of the different pictures?
Okay, do you want me to turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the top is what other people have kindly said is the iconic photo of Woodstock, the couple with their bare bums. That was on a cover of Newsweek, actually. The next one down is Santana, which was actually the debut performance of Santana at Woodstock. Okay, this is Jefferson Airplane, Grace Slick. They don't tour anymore. Grace lives in Malibu and writes poetry. This is the iconic photo of The Who with Keith Moon, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. And this is Robert Daltrey of The Who, and they're still touring. Janis Joplin, who unfortunately passed the year after Woodstock. And down here is Country Joe McDonald, the song about Vietnam in the documentary film that was done on Woodstock. My Sleeping Youth here, which was in Vogue magazine.
That's why these pictures look really familiar.
Okay. And then the last one is The Last Morning. Down on the stage, which you can't see, is Jimi Hendrix playing the Star-Spangled Banner, which was the closing act in the film. So this is me walking away on the last morning.
That is amazing.
500,000 people, love. We were the third largest city in New York State.
Really?
Yes. New York City, Buffalo, and then us, Woodstock. 500,000 hippies.
Now I notice these are all numbered and they're all really low numbers.
Well, this is part of 25 sets. That's hence the number. Like this is the 6th box. It comes in a leather box that I had made where I live now in Cape Town in South Africa. For the purposes of the auction, obviously, they had to be out. They're all signed by me for collectors. I was told that's what you do in terms of having them sold as a collector's item.
They're in remarkably great condition.
Well, they're not vintage, okay?
Okay.
You know, I don't want to mislead, okay? They weren't. I mean, this kind of printing didn't exist 40 years ago.
Well, no wonder why the color looks so intense and gorgeous still.
These are Fuji crystal archival, so the last 200 years.
Oh.
That's what it says on the box. I had them done by the leading printer in New York, Dugal. Okay.
So if we've got 200 years, how many more years do we have?
Well, you know.
Quite a few.
Well, they've come up with a
Several generations.
genome with mice, you know, that you can live forever, I guess. But anyway, I got to Woodstock because I had been, actually, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I was a hippie. I was a hippie in San Francisco in the summer of love, okay? And some of the folks who came to Woodstock I knew from San Francisco. For example, like the Hog Farm, who were taking care of people who were on bad trips, bad acid, I guess we still say that, you know, who were suffering from drugs at Woodstock. And so I knew those people. Excuse me. And so it wasn't as known. I mean, if you took a poll, you probably would find 10 million people who thought they were at Woodstock.
Oh, who thought they were.
No, seriously, I mean, you know. So I got to know these people when I was staying in San Francisco. The previous year, Summer of Love was 67 going into 68. And so I started hearing rumbles, rumors, and about this rock festival. And what happened was that you had people who were in transition in their lives. It was the middle of August of 69, and so you had people who were going into the Army, funny enough, because it was an anti-war time, who were going into college or finishing college, or, you know, and so at that point in time and history, there was a kind of a celebration. I mean, that's what Woodstock was. It was a celebration of life. And so no one knew. They had predicted, the producers of it, they had predicted 40, 50,000 people. Well, no one knew that there was that many people who were interested in this kind of an event. So, you know, all over this America, you'd have 2 or 3 in one town, and they would tell, and it was a word of mouth kind of thing. And so we stopped the traffic on the New York Thruway, and where it could have been a disaster, it wasn't. You know, nothing really terrible, nothing really awful happened. It was caught in a little time warp, you know, if you will. And it was terrific. I mean, I'm told that there was rain and mud. You won't find it, you know, here. I had only been photographing for a year.
Really?
Yeah, I had started photographing my friends in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, my you know, friends that I was living with in a commune in San Francisco. That's the first time I ever had a camera. I wasn't an amateur. I didn't have, you know, like most people, I guess, photographing their family and such.
Right.
I had just picked up a camera in San Francisco, and so it was a happy start of my career.
Yeah, but these are some amazing photographs.
I was very lucky. I never shot, you know, at night with tungsten film, you know.
And look how close you got to the stage. I saw how many people were there.
I had actually someone like me, you know, you know, young, inexperienced freelancer. I had as good a credential as the New York Times or, you know, other regular, you know, photographers. And so I was allowed to go back and forth. I would mainly shoot the rock and roll acts at night. I'm funny too. I only photographed the ones that I liked. And that was mainly the ones from San Francisco. And then I would go out during the day and do the so-called communal pictures. Most of the other photographers were afraid that if they left the stage, you know, you can see. I mean, how many, you know,
right.
There's people and they're close to the stage. They're trying to get closer to their, you know, favorite acts and so on. But I was able to go back and forth. That's probably why you don't see a lot of the other pictures besides the rock and roll acts, because the photographers thought that if they left, they wouldn't
get back.
Not for any legal or, you know, reason,
no,
but just because of the crush of people, you know, that were around. I mean, there was a fence between us. You don't see it much, but there was a fence between us and the crowd. Okay, but you know, they weren't rowdy. It wasn't like a soccer match or anything, you know, like that. It was beautiful. You know, I wish that the world could be like Woodstock.
Well, these pictures definitely take you back to the past.
Yes. You know, it was a special time. You know, and as I said, you know, in the beginning of this, people were going off to do different things. I mean, they came, some of them to find answers. Some of them wanted to know which direction they should take. Like a friend of mine was going to go to law school and become a lawyer. He dropped that. He went to Germany and Mexico to study jewelry design, and now he runs the biggest jewelry design school in San Francisco. And so there was a lot of stories like that, people were looking for a direction in their life. Not all of them found it, obviously. But it was a special time, and I was lucky enough to have been there to capture it. I mean, just getting there was
was an adventure.
And I don't exactly how I returned. I mean.
But you're here today.
Yes, and happy to be here at Bonhams.
And I also understand you're going to be in a magazine next week about your work in South Africa?
Right. After I was burned out on the 60s, literally, figuratively, because besides Woodstock, I had done all of the more rough things, the riots after Martin Luther King was assassinated, Black Panthers, anti-war demonstrations. There was a lot. In 68, 69, so in 1970, a friend offered me to come along and photograph with him. He was going into the State Department, and he wanted someone with him as company too. I mean, not just to photograph. And he had the idea to do a book, which he didn't do. But anyway, I went with him on a trip through West Africa, and I've sort of never looked back. I've lived in Africa since then. And the story that you mentioned is going to be printed in something called Picture Professional next week. And it talks about it actually talks more about other photographers because there's a lot going on. I think as people might have seen with the World Cup, how far along South Africa has become. And so this is one aspect of it, talking about photography from the apartheid time to the present, my small role in it as an American living there, trying to help other photographers and photography in general. Well, and I'm speaking of photojournalism. Okay? That's what I am. Okay, not commercial photography of products and such, but it'll be printed next week in a magazine called Picture Professional. And that's pretty much what I do. I come back and forth and live mostly in Cape Town, South Africa.
Oh, that's a tough life. Cape Town's absolutely gorgeous. And as a photographer, what's probably one of the most interesting photographs you've taken as a photojournalist in South Africa since you've been there?
I had the privilege of being with the Mandela family, Nelson Mandela, soon after he was released 20 years ago from prison. And so that's one of the photos in the piece, in the article. And that was certainly, I mean, he's a saint. I mean, just to spend time with him. This was in the early years, before he became president in '94. After that, he had, like Barack does, he had bodyguards, and he had, then there were layers. But up until then, I could sometimes talk with him one-on-one. We used to talk a lot about white wine. He loves white wine. I don't think he got much in prison. So that has been special. I mean, everything in Cape Town in South Africa, it's like, I don't want to be silly, but it is like living in San Francisco in the 60s. I mean,
that's an interesting comparison.
You can get access to people. They're not, they're more available, okay? You don't have to go through 2 or 3 secretaries and such. And so it's just easier to work there in terms of taking an idea. I mean, my main way of working in Africa, I use South Africa, Cape Town as a base, and I work throughout Africa, okay? And so it's easier to take an idea, something that you want to do. I mean, I work mainly on my own ideas. I've done books. I like books because you can do a solid piece of work. It allows you the time to really spend with a subject, with a, you know, and so I'm not, in other words, I'm not waiting for an assignment. I'm not waiting for someone to call me. And that way I can make my own schedule, like months in advance. And it it suits my personality better to be the one giving myself an assignment, actually, you know. And the fact that I have a writer that I've been working with all these years who used to come to Africa with me.
Oh, that should be really pretty interesting.
She's the co-writer on the piece that I showed you.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Ah.
And does a lot with auctions. Janelle, the public relations lady, knows her name.
Okay.
Because she covers the jewelry auction market.
Oh. Well,
Okay.
Meanwhile, if people would like to catch up with what you're doing, besides, of course, looking at Bonhams and Butterfields to see the photographs that you have on auction.
That's the old Jason.
Yes, and
Yes.
for the new Jason, where would they find more information on you?
Well, they can find me on my website, www.africatrek, one word,
And is that TREK?
Trek, like Star
Okay.
Trek. So africatrek.co, C as in cat, O, .za. That's the South
For South
African-
Africa.
For South Africa.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.